5 things you should be aware of before investing in Paraguayan real estate. I'm joined here by Markus. He is a citizen of Austria, and he is a real estate investor and owner here in Asunción, Paraguay. And today, Markus is going to walk us through some of the biggest pitfalls that people face when investing in this real estate market. Thank you for coming, Markus. I appreciate it. Like, tell us right out of the gate the number one reason, or the number one problem perhaps, that people face when coming to Paraguay and looking to invest in this real estate market.
So the number one on the list is something that I myself heard from a wise real estate investor from Spain, actually, who's investing here since 40 years. And he once told me the destiny or the result or success of a foreigner in Paraguay is determined at the airport. So whoever picks him up at the airport basically holds his face in his hands. Meaning, when you come to Paraguay and you have a friend here or relative here, it is much easier because you have somebody you trust, somebody that can help you to present you the right people and the right opportunities, which is usually a big advantage. But on the other hand, when you come here and you don't know anyone, Paraguay is a very interesting spot at the moment, so people come here. It's a kind of cold approach, which is fine and very interesting here. But when you come here, it always is this famous saying, keep it in mind, because whoever you meet first, basically, meaning whoever picks you up at the airport or whoever service you choose, this is also maybe where you come in with Nomad Elite. So if you have somebody trustworthy that takes you by the hand and shows you around and presents you everybody and does all these necessary steps for you, it's a big advantage. If you don't have that, if you just come here blindfolded and then you go around, you do your thing, you don't really know who to trust or what you're getting into. So this is the number one thing. Be careful who picks you up at the airport.
Right. I think this is a very valid point that you made, because like doing business, investing in real estate is all about trust. You buy from people you trust, you know? So that's important to know. So when you first come here, really consider who you associate yourself with. That's the number one thing that you would put right on top of your list, where you would say.
The second thing I would say, very important, of course, is land titles. So that means when you consider purchasing any type of real estate in Paraguay, it doesn't matter if it's agriculture, if it's an apartment, if it's just a land title is very important. So that means do your due diligence on land titles. Usually people tend to go to a lawyer. I personally think you don't need a lawyer for that. What you need is a good notary. So that's the second advice I would give. Don't save money on the notary, because the notary is very important, on having a good and competent notary that can help you a lot and also can help you avoid a lot of mistakes. And when you come from, let's say, the US or Europe, here not every notary who has the university title notary is the same kind of notary. So you have all types of notaries here, but of course different quality of notaries and different reputation of notaries. So also you need to be careful and choose a renowned good notary and don't save money on the notary. So they usually look into all the paperwork that is provided by the seller, whatever you choose to purchase, and they can tell you, okay, here you can do a contract, private contract. You cannot get the land title, for example, because let's say you want to purchase an apartment or a building under construction, you cannot get a land title there because the building is not finished yet. So when it comes to an apartment building under construction, it takes around, construction needs to be finished, and then it takes roughly more or less 1 year until you get a land title. That's completely normal. If you, on the other hand, choose to purchase an agricultural land, or if you purchase any land to build a house, usually you get a land title right away. Or if you want to purchase a land to build something on top of it, to build your own building, you also get a land title right away. If you don't get the land title, it means something is not 100% right there. Not meaning there has to be some problem there, but it means maybe somebody died in the past, seller's parents, for example, and they didn't finish all these process to have the title under their name 100% ready, or maybe some topographic measurements or something needs to be corrected. So it doesn't always mean there is something shady or something fraudulent going on. It only means that you have to be careful. You need a good notary, and they can tell you, okay, here we need to correct this, here we need to do that. And that might take a couple of weeks, a couple of months, or even maybe a couple of years to solve. And then you decide you want to move forward or not. Same when you do, let's say you want to purchase in a gated community. It's the same principle as in an apartment building. So the whole project needs to be finished first. And once it's finished, He gets the final approval from the municipality, they inspect everything, and after that the notary can do the land titling of the subdivision. This is a normal process. But of course the notaries always check that there are no, let's say, embargoes or any kind of obligations or whatever on it. So the notary is very, very important when choosing what to buy and the kind of, when it comes to the paperwork. That's the second thing.
Excellent. I want to add a little point here to see how relevant it is for Paraguay. When I was looking to purchase my first piece of real estate in Spain, I was looking at a very specific property that had multiple owners. And at first didn't know that because I only was talking to one person. And he wanted to sell it. But then I learned that the apartment was actually in the name of more people and the others did not agree to sell it. Is that a common problem here as well if you buy an apartment that's been around for a long time?
Happened to me a couple of times in the last 15 years. Usually when this happens is somebody owns an apartment or a house, let's say, or land, and then the person passes away. So now they have a couple of children. And then what unfortunately here happens very often is the succession is not done. They just don't do it. I never really understood why, but very, very often people are not doing all these legal paperwork process and finish it because it takes around 1 to 2 years to do so. So let's say 10 years go by and then you want to purchase something. And then you figure out, okay, they never did all that, but their father passed away 10 years ago. They just didn't do the paperwork. So then you have to do it for them or basically help them with the process. And you have to wait another 1 or 2 years until you get the land title. So then you need to decide, okay, do I want to take that risk or not? But very often, as you just mentioned, it happens that you have 3 or 4 children behind. You talk to one, of course, usually one person talks to you, it's normal. You figure out, okay, there are some brothers and sisters involved and you trust that they all agree on the sale or they talk within the family. And then at one stage, especially usually when the notary comes involved, because the notary always talks to all the parties and they tell you, okay, here, these are the owners, let me talk to all of them, bring me all the passports. And then suddenly one or more of these owners, they say, no, I'm not selling, or they change the price point, for example. This is also unfortunately a common thing, which brings me to the next point, actually, which is the third point, which is informal or verbal agreements. Mm-hmm. So even shaking hands or giving the word or saying something like, I promise, unfortunately here, it doesn't have the same meaning as it does for somebody in the US or Europe. So the word is clear. I promise you to do this. They completely know what they're saying, but there is no execution or consequence behind. So it doesn't really they don't feel this honor or this pride to really comply. So of course there are very serious people. You have people who do verbal agreements with you and everything is fine. But it unfortunately also happens quite often that even shaking hands or giving your word is not good enough and then it falls apart. And that can be particularly disappointing, especially when you come from a European culture or American culture, because it's not how it was supposed to be. But unfortunately, it's part of the local, I wouldn't say it's culture, but unfortunately, it's a reality that you have to deal with. And which makes it difficult. But also on the other hand, having the written agreements in this type of legal environment are also very fragile. So it's even more important that you have some sort of trust relation between the parties, even when it comes to a simple thing like purchasing an apartment or a house. So that we already have the top 3 points that I would really think people need to try to understand and be aware. It's difficult because you never get used to it. I can tell you that, because even after 15 years, because when you come from outside, you grew up in a different way, you have a different education, a different mindset, but you need to find a way to live with it, to deal with it, and then you can move forward. And of course, very often also deals close, happen, work out. But also what you just mentioned, this is something that is happening. And it happened to me at the very beginning. When I came here at the beginning, the first land I had confirmed to purchase, everything was agreed on, and one day before the signature, even the notary checked everything was fine, and one day before the signature, they changed the price. So, and then I didn't move forward. So you really, it can happen at any stage in this type of negotiation. Time has a different meaning as well. because usually when you come from outside, you want it done quickly, you want to finish stuff. And that doesn't mean that the local culture supports that.
The most important point that you mentioned was to have a friendly point of contact, right?
Yes.
That's like number one.
Yes.
Then second, we had land titles and real estate titles, right?
Correct.
That would be second.
Yes.
And then third, verbal agreements. You have to be aware of that because the art of making an agreement is not the same here as it is in Western Europe, North America, Australia. What's the next point that's important to consider where you would say, be aware of this before you start looking into purchasing real estate here?
I think one very important point is taxes and regulations. So very often when people come to Paraguay and invest here, there is kind of this thinking that here it's not like the US or in Europe, so kind of here anything goes. You can basically do whatever you want, it's no problem, and people are talking in that way, like, okay, we solve it, we do this, we do that, no problem, no problem. It's not so simple. So you have very clear laws, you have a very clear tax system here, and you have regulations. So especially when it comes to real estate, Paraguay has very, very strong anti-money laundering laws. Meaning everybody who sells you something, real estate or also a car dealership, banks have the same thing, insurance companies, they need your compliance documentation. Meaning you usually need to fill out a KYC formula, you need to give them your passport, you need to show the origin of the funds. So when you, for example, want to purchase something from me, to check that, to also check that you're not on any blacklist or terrorist list, and then the sale can move forward. So meaning when you here deal with a serious real estate company and you purchase from them, they all have to do that. So that's the one thing. The other thing is then there are laws and rules about construction. So you cannot just build whatever you want, wherever you want. Of course, in the city, when it comes to a building and the bigger it gets, the more it's controlled and the more you have to look after it. But very often people come here, they go in the countryside, purchase a piece of land, and then they build a house, but they never had a permit for building. And then years later, because very often nothing happens, so it takes years, and suddenly years later, the problem emerges. So don't build anything without a permit, and always make sure that your construction company is taking that into consideration.
That's very sensible advice. I wanted to touch on the point where you mentioned companies here have to comply with very strict due diligence. When I purchased my vehicle here, I had to show my tax return, my bank statements. I paid 100% upfront, so I didn't get a loan for the car. But that was kind of strange to me because when I purchased a vehicle in the US, I didn't have to do that. But here, there's very strict compliance.
But one of the reason, or the major reason probably, is this, because they were complying with all these anti-money laundering laws and regulations. They were imposed on the country from outside, and so it's been in place a couple of years, but it has never been that strictly applied, and that changed drastically for a couple of months ago or last year. So wow. Because at first it was only banks. Mm-hmm. And then they included notaries, lawyers, insurance companies, real estate companies, and car companies.
That includes you as well, because I also had to do this when we started getting into business, right? I think that's a good thing for an outsider coming into Paraguay, wanting to relocate, looking to invest into the local real estate market. That's something you have to consider. So I would say the compliance that's currently placed here in Paraguay, it's very comparable to compliance in Europe or the US. The process is not exactly the same, but they're aiming to achieve the same, to create an environment that's safe for investors, right? And like you said, 2 or 3 months ago, they got upgraded to investment grade, which I think is very positive. Now, what's the final point where you would say you must keep an eye on this before you're going to invest in this real estate market here? What's the final takeaway from this video?
I think the final point is you cannot apply a purely Western mindset. So I see that very often, and I was the same at the beginning, because you come here and you get frustrated because they tell you tomorrow or on Monday, and it's not gonna happen tomorrow or on Monday. So you wanna push it, and you want people to comply, and very often they don't do it the way you want it to, or in the time frame they agreed to do. And also when it comes to details, when you apply a purely Western mindset, especially in real estate, like here, I don't know, it's not a 90-degree angle, or here this is a crack, or here this is this, or here this is that, or here is some water, whatever. thing. So you cannot do it like this here. So you need to, when you come here, you get very good real estate at a good price. You get good returns, good yields, but you don't get German quality. You can't get it. So you need to kind of expect, let's say, 80% or something from what you have in mind. You cannot get the level of perfection you would want to get or you're used to from maybe Europe or the United States. You cannot do it here. And that comes to all things in life here. You cannot apply a purely Western mindset when you tell people, okay, this needs to be like this because, I don't know, in New York it's like that. Or here, this needs to be like this because in Germany it's like that. It doesn't work. So you need to be patient. And also, of course, you try to push and try to move, otherwise things don't move forward. But it's a delicate dance, and you cannot push through the wall because otherwise they shut down, the locals shut down, and then they don't move at all. So you know that as well, I'm sure, since you've been here since a couple of years already.
Everything takes a lot of patience here. Like things move a lot slower, like you said.
There's a lot of opportunity and there's a great country, but you cannot apply a purely Western mindset. So things are not the way they are in Europe or in the US. And you need always to keep that in mind all the time is very important, because otherwise you would get into a fight with everybody all the time. Because there's always something to argue on, because simply very often people are not complying or not complying the way they were supposed to comply in our way of thinking. And there's nothing you can do about it.
I hope you guys got a lot of value out of this video. If you're interested in relocating to Paraguay or investing in this real estate market, please go to nomadelite.com and click on book a consultation. I look forward to speaking with you personally. Thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, everything that you've shared. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Markus.
Thank you.
We see you guys in the next video.